Hey there, guys. Hey, this is John DeVadoss. I lead up development for Neo Blockchain based in Seattle, Washington. We have a globally decentralized team, developers from Asia, Latin America, here in the US, Western Europe, Russia, Australia. So it's been fun in a way working virtually. I'm very happy to be here. I want to thank the team and especially Robbie and Renee for this opportunity. I hope to spend a few minutes walking you through what we are doing and what we have done to bring blockchain application development to the mainstream. I think of it as rapid blockchain application development, and let me give you a bit of context. So when I got into the blockchain space a few years ago, it was very clear to me that there was this expectation that you had to be kind of a high priest and you had to know about things like solidity and Turing completeness, and you had to have spent months, digging deep to understand how to build smart contracts. And for me, this is fundamentally flawed. And I'll explain why. So let me just quickly move in to the next slide. So a bit of context. I spent about almost 2 decades at Microsoft working on platforms and tools. And at the core, I'm a platform guy. I enjoy and I appreciate building tools for developers at global scale. So if you pause here for a second, there's about 21 million developers worldwide, approximately, give or take. And if you ask yourself, how many blockchain developers do we have today? And the guess, it goes anywhere from people say 50,000, people say 100,000, and some say 5,000. So I don't really know what the numbers are, but very clearly, in comparison to this 21 million developers worldwide, what we have today is a drop in the ocean. Now, I'm a very big believer in this mission that we are on to change, to disrupt, and I say disrupt very intentionally, to disrupt and to build a better world for all of us together. But if we're going to do it, we do it not with this very small set of, again, elite high priest-like developers. We have to go to the mainstream. We have to make it easy, effortless, friction-free for the mainstream developer to quickly jump in and start building smart contracts and dApps and more on any of our chains, not just Neo, but any of our chains. The next point I want to emphasize is developers, if you're watching, listening, you probably know that at this point, VS Code is the most popular tool set out there. And I've seen estimates anywhere from 50 to 60 to 65% of developers using VS Code regularly. Now, the data I have, again, this is an estimate, is that on the average, every month, there's about 6 to 7 million developers actively using and building on VS Code. And again, for comparison, what is 50,000 developers to 6 million? No comparison. And so the approach that we have taken at Neo, our vision, our ambition is to build the most developer-friendly blockchain platform in the industry. And so the approach we have taken is to take a very big bet on VS Code and .NET and to attach what we are building in terms of tools to the VS Code ecosystem. I think it was late last summer, we announced and we launched the preview of what we call the Neo Toolkit for .NET. And we shipped V1 December, early January of this year to very good feedback. And I'm going to just switch very quickly to show you where you can access this. I'm going to go to the VS Code Marketplace. Again, you can see the URL on the screen, obviously. So if you go in and just type in blockchain, I can't type this one. There we go. Blockchain, you get a bunch of tools back, and you can see the usual suspects, IBM, Microsoft, and we are right there. So we have the Neo Blockchain Toolkit, we have the Neo Visual Dev Tracker, and so if you click on it, we have a set of extensions. I want to pause here for just a minute or so. The way we have designed the Neo Toolkit for .NET, and again, we called it the Neo Blockchain Toolkit, three things out of the box. In my experience, during my startup time when I was playing and working with the blockchain space, it was very hard you have to go get the compiler from over here and the debugger, if you had a debugger from over here, and the private net from someplace else. So just the moving parts to bring everything together was non-trivial. So we said, look, with the Neo toolkit, it's out of the box. It's a one-stop shop. So be able to have the templates, the design patterns and the libraries to rapidly, uh, in fact, on the Neo toolkit, you can build your first smart contract in about 3 or 4 minutes. And I don't want to market Neo or the Neo toolkit for folks out there, but just to give you a feel for what I believe is the way that we, as the blockchain industry, have to really reshape our thinking. It has to be that simple for the mainstream developer. And lastly, one IDE, whether you're building testing on your private net or your test net or the main net, or you're moving back and forth and you have a smart contract on the private net, you want to go to test net, make it friction free, make it effortless. And that's really what we have done with the Neo blockchain toolkit. We have a quick start. Let me just show you very quickly, and then I'll jump to a couple of demos. So we have a quick start, and if you go in and take a look, whether you're using Ubuntu or Mac OS or Windows, obviously, very quickly in about 10, 12 minutes, you can probably get this set up, installed, running. I will not take the time right now to walk you through, but I would strongly recommend, give it a spin, give it a go, try it, and certainly please give me feedback. I'm always looking for feedback to make the developer experience better for people out there. Let me switch back. So building on the Neo toolkit for .NET, which again is out there, and we'll ship a 1.1 version very shortly, probably even, I would say, end of next week or so. So building on this foundational tool set that we have deployed. And by the way, the toolkit is MIT licensed, much like everything that we build on the Neo platform is MIT licensed. It's on GitHub. So feel free to go in, poke around. If you want to make a pull request, feel free, go ahead as well. If you want to fork it and go play with it, more power to you as well. So building on this thing, there's a couple of things recently in the last few weeks that we announced, and we also shared a preview of this. I'll take the time in this particular talk to focus on two things. The first thing I want to share with you is this notion that is often called time travel debugging in the industry. By the way, about a year ago, debugging itself was a significant nightmare in the blockchain space. And I remember 12 months ago, 14 months ago, having to do printfs and log statements to figure out what the heck was happening within my smart contract. And we fixed that with the V1 of the toolkit. Debugging is as effortless as debugging a Lambda function on Amazon Web Services, or debugging an Azure function on Windows or Microsoft Azure. So what is time travel debugging? Now, we all realize, right, there's something unique about the blockchain platform. Well, first of all, it's an economic platform like no other in history. In history, we've seen mainframes, PCs, client server, SOA, cloud, but they're all plumbing platforms. They're all infrastructure platforms. For me, the blockchain platform is the first economic platform in history. Now with that, of course, it is immutable and always forward looking. It's always moving forward. You can't go back in time on a blockchain. So then how do you debug, especially insidious bugs that are often side effects of things that happened maybe previously in time? So what we have done is we took this technique that Microsoft pioneered for the kernel debugger, essentially a trace debugger or a reverse debugger that allows you to record the execution. And then much like a recorder or a video player, being able to go back and forth and use queries and also share the trace with your colleagues to give you a debugging experience like no other in the industry at the source code level. So whether you're building your smart contract in C# or Python or Go or Rust at the source code level. Let me switch over and kind of give you a feel for this. I have, there you go. So in this case, I'm running the Neo toolkit as well as the private net on Ubuntu on my Windows machine. I'm going to just bring up VS Code. There we go. I think you can see it. All right, let me maximize the display here. So in this case, what I have is a very simple smart contract. It's think of it as uh, like a DNS app, a very simple DNS app. And I don't know why it's downloading the debugger at this point. Anyway, all right. So I don't want to necessarily go through, but what I'm going to show you is, in this case, let me just start. Let me just start debugging. And we step through, there we go. So this is the main function, and up on top, you see the typical, so step into, the step out, and the step back. Step back is interesting in this case because obviously, this is what makes it interesting, what makes it unique in terms of, like I said, being able to play forward, play back in time. So let me just step into, there we go, switch. So let's go, in this case, we are registering a new domain name, and that's kind of the simple scenario, right? So we go in at this point, I'm now in the register function. And so again, in the interest of time, I don't want to spend way too long. You folks can go download, play with it, but I'm going to now step back, and there we go. So I'm back in where I was before. So this notion of not just debugging on your test net and your private net, but actually debugging across time, we believe will make a substantial difference for developers that are building smart contracts, especially because of the unique forward-only nature of the ledger and the blockchain platform. And you're familiar with I'm sure the spate of DAO bugs and hacks where folks have had to find ways to compensate. So these things are arising, in my humble opinion, because of the lack of maturity of the debugging experience of blockchain platforms. And now with this, what we call the time travel debugger, we hope to really raise the bar and to significantly, make the development, the build, edit, debug, test, deploy experience so much more fun and certainly so much more risk-free as well. That was the first thing. All right, so then I gave you a demo of the time travel debugger. So the second thing I want to just quickly again give you some context and demo as well for you is this week we announced and we are shipping a preview of what we call the visual token design. So what is the underlying basis? Why are we building this? For much of the last 2, 3, 4 years, the focus in terms of developers has been on the chain, has been about transactions and blocks and algorithms for consensus and such. Now, we need this, right? This is the foundation that we build our industry on. However, the applications themselves could not care less about the consensus or the nature of the algorithm behind how staking and BFT and so on, right? The applications themselves engage and work at the token level. And so what we have done is working in collaboration with the Token Taxonomy Framework Organization, as well as the Azure Blockchain team, we are shipping for the very first time a developer experience to be able to visualize, to design, to architect, and then to deploy tokens. And what this means is, as a developer, you're not worrying about the nuts and bolts of the, how do I get this transaction going? How do I build a smart contract? You're really thinking about what are the building blocks of the application. Now, whether it be, an application to tokenize real estate, or whether it be an application to tokenize tickets for the Seahawks games, or anywhere in between. The tokens, it is the tokenization that makes these apps real, that makes these apps come to life. And so we are bridging the entire developer experience. Whether you want to build, debug, edit, you have the Neo toolkit, or whether you want to build the apps themselves at the domain abstractions, which is the visual token designer. So let me switch over, give you a quick demo of this, and I think I have this running as a matter of fact. There we go. All right. I have, again, VS Code running with the Visual Token Designer extensions loaded. I'll show you a couple of samples. In this case, actually, you can see, we've built a sample token definition and templates for the Euro 2020 soccer tournament. If you're a soccer fan, right? So what does this mean? In this case, so this is the token definition, and the token definition comprises a few attributes. So obviously, if it is a ticket for a soccer tournament, it is a non-fungible token because there are only so many tickets. And when you have a ticket or when I have a ticket, it is a non-fungible asset. Of course, there is supply control. You want to only sell so many tickets for a certain soccer match. So the notion of supply control, right? Also, if you are selling tickets for a match, the tickets are indivisible. You can't take a ticket and say, let me break it up and give you half a ticket and give the other person the other half. It doesn't work that way. So again, I'll pause. I don't want to necessarily take too much time to walk you through, but the idea behind the visual token designer is to easily, very quickly visualize, architect, design, build, and deploy these token definitions. I'll give you another sample here. I think I have this going. Okay, let's look at, let's say you want to tokenize art. You want to tokenize art in a digital fashion. So what would be some of the attributes of a tokenized digital asset art? Obviously, it's a singleton because there can only be one instance of a certain piece of digital art, right? So it would have to be a singleton. Of course, again, art being art, you can't take a painting and say, I want to divide this and I have half the painting and I give the other half to my friend Robbie or Renee over there, right? However, it's interesting. It can be transferable because if I had to have ownership of a piece of art that was digital, I could transfer it to Robbie and say, look, we have a transaction. So anyway, pause here, and folks can certainly go, like I said, you can go to the VS Code Marketplace, and when we get the preview out there, download, play with it, give us feedback. And as I was saying earlier, for us, it is the developer and the developer. This industry will go mainstream. However, it will go mainstream when we go to the developers. We cannot make the developers ask to come to us. It has to be a polyglot, C#, Python, Go, Rust, whatever you want to use. It has to be effortless. Like I said, 3-4 minutes to build a smart contract. People are busy, they have full-time jobs, they have gigs on the side. There is no way it makes any sense to say, go learn something new, learn a new language, a new framework, a new tool set, right? And that is what is driving our ambition in this phase, NEO's focus in this phase. With that, I want to go back. I think this is my last slide. For me, as a platform guy, as a tools guy, I see huge numbers. I see 20, 21 million developers. And I see opportunity for us to go there to where they are, because they are the people who will build the dApps and the smart contracts that will transform, disrupt the world as we see it for the better. And I see the 6 to 7 million developers every month using VS Code. And I want to say, if you're using VS Code, we have built, probably in my mind at this point, the best developer experience, not just for smart contracts, but also for tokenized dApps. With that, I want to pause. Again, I want to thank you for giving me the time. I really appreciate the opportunity, Renee and Robbie. It's been a lot of fun working on this together. And I hope folks watching, listening, will have some value from this. I want to go back to my first slide. You can see my Twitter handle. I want feedback, ping me. If you like something, if you think we can make something better, or if you didn't like something as well, ping me on Twitter or LinkedIn, send me email. Always happy to connect. I am based up in the Seattle area, so PST time zone. But like I said, very happy to talk and follow up. So thank you again, and I appreciate the time and the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. It was a great talk. Really appreciate it. I think people will get a lot out of this. We have some time for questions, and although it's virtual, we have Renee and myself here. And I'd love to ask you a couple of questions if that's okay.
Absolutely, please go free. Let's make it some fun as well for the listeners there.
Sure. Yeah. So while you were speaking about development tools as sort of this limiting factor for unlocking the value of a specific technology, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious to hear your perspective on how sort of having this new domain of where we can build new developer tools specifically for blockchain, we can actually ask the question of what's the best developer process possible. Do you see that process translating over to more old technology stacks? So I'm thinking, do you envision a focus on developer tools themselves to be transitioning from just blockchain to more traditional development domains?
Excellent question, Robbie. I'm glad you asked the question. So there's probably a few different facets in your question. Let me focus on two, and then we can certainly drill down further. First of all, I strongly do not believe that there is a blockchain development process. There is only one software development process. Now we have different techniques, agile and so on and so forth, but there is only one software development process. And this, I believe, has been one of the flaws of our industry early on. We should not reinvent a new development process because it will not work. The second thing, absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. For example, with the visual token designer, you can use the tool, Robbie, to build a tokenized app, a D app, that is running on a Neo or some other chain. However, you can also use the visual token designer to build a tokenized app that runs on a centralized database-based system. Absolutely. And that's kind of really, my vision is I see it as symmetry. We have to span the two because there will be a bridge. People will not jump right away. It will take time. And so being able to bridge and provide that symmetry of developer experience, I think, is critical to driving innovation and momentum for us.
Cool. So some of these visualization tools are chain agnostic. Am I hearing that right?
Absolutely. I mean, like the token designer, it's essentially we are building on top of a collection of standards called TTF, the Token Taxonomy Framework. And of course, we code gen to the Neo blockchain platform. But again, being open source, MIT license on GitHub, people could come in and build a code gen plugin for blockchain X or Y or Z. Right? That's the whole idea. I mean, that's really how we raise the bar. We believe fundamentally, I believe fundamentally in this notion of standards driving innovation to build a better future for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have some questions that I have in mind. I'm just wondering, how do you conduct the research in the aspect of user experience? So how do you know what users want?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. So I wish I could tell you that we have this very sophisticated process and tools and methodologies. But Rene, where we began and where we are today is we have a team of developers collectively spent probably, I don't know, maybe 150 man years in the development, software development space. And so my belief is this is not different. This should not be different. If you're a developer and you're building an Azure function or a Lambda on Amazon Web Services, or you're building a single page application, the experience as a developer, as a designer ought to be exactly the same. And that's why we've taken this approach of building the extensions on top of Visual VS Code and such, right? So we could certainly discuss if that is the right or not approach, but my firm conviction, my belief is this should not be different. I go back to my last slide, right? Mainstream. Mainstream means the same mental model, the same imagery, the same visual experience, that it should not be, there should be no mental block saying, oh, I'm now building on a blockchain platform, or I'm now building on Neo. No, whether you're building on any of these mainstream platforms, and then you are building on the Neo blockchain platform, same tooling, same experience, same edit, build, debug, test, deploy, time travel debugging, much like the mainstream guys on the Windows kernel. Absolutely the same experience is what is driving our thinking.
Yes, thank you so much for
Thank you.
your answer.
Thank you. I know it's a long answer, but something I have a lot of passion and conviction for. This is the mission, and what has been holding the industry back, I believe, is this lack of understanding of the developer mindset. right? We should not make this elite. This is not about the elite. This is not about the high priest. This is about the regular developer out there. I mean, maybe it's the kid in middle school who wants to say, hey, I want to give it a go. Why not? You can do it too, right? Absolutely. You get the toolkit. It's free. Spend 5 minutes, build your first contract, and off you go.
To that point, I had a question about blockchain education, not necessarily from a tooling perspective, but also from like the very origins in terms of use case and ideation principles. What would your recommendation be to, say, somebody like me who's learning how to code and interact with various chains in terms of building useful applications? Where would be the first place to look, or what are some principles to ideate by in terms of use cases?
That's a really good question, Robbie. It's a really, really good question. I would say perhaps, if somebody's new to development, that a tool like the Visual Token Designer is a good place to start. To think about what is the end goal, what are the, like you said, the use cases, what are the scenarios, what is the customer or the user journey, what are the personas, what are they trying to accomplish? Is it about tokenizing, like we said, tickets for a soccer game? It's about tokenizing art, for perhaps one of the largest museums in the world, or all the way in between. I would say perhaps start there and then work back, because eventually at the end of the day, a smart contract is just code. It's no different from, again, like I said, a Lambda function or an Azure function or a stored procedure, right? So perhaps starting top down to visualize, to understand, to have a mental model of the end goal, the purpose, the business goal, if you will, or even if you're just building, as a hobby, the customer experience, the user experience, their journey, and the personas, work back from it. Perhaps might be more enjoyable and also more purposeful as well, to build something that you can then see work out there on the chain.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely agree that beginning with the end in mind in terms of how the customer interacts or how the user interacts is definitely a great principle.
Thank you.
I guess we can do one more question. Renee, if you don't have one, I can ask.
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious about your perspective in terms of leading a development team. Obviously, a ton of experience. I believe you said Microsoft. Correct me if I'm wrong. But Neo, like you said, is a global organization. What's it like transitioning from, or taking one development team locally and interacting with a development team globally, especially for open source software? How do you sort of manage the direction of how things ought to go?
Yeah, so it's a very relevant and I think very timely question. If I could humbly interject, I mean, perhaps the word is not manage. I think it's really more of an emergent, approach to developing software, because in some sense, Robbie, we are living this decentralized model, if you will. There is no centralized team. We have developers pretty much every time zone. And actually, as a matter of fact, every continent, I believe at this point, except probably one. So in that sense, it is a very different experience from working and leading a dev team in a major corporation like Microsoft, where I spent close to 2 decades. But the key difference, I would say, is this, Robbie. For us, working in the space we are in, it is really about speed in terms of the cycle, being able to talk to developers, talk to community, get feedback, and then be able to ship very quickly. We can ship in a couple of days. In fact, we can ship multiple times in a day, and that creates a sense of energy and excitement and passion that I think is very difficult to find in probably more of a top-down mainstream corporation. And I think it's the motivating factor for many of us to do what we do, is that change is happening very rapidly. And that keeps us going every single day, especially during this strange time of this shutdown.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely see that shipping multiple times, especially for an open source developer, it's very exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, it's nothing like that, right? It's real. I mean, it's tangible. It's you can see it, and you can see developers out there download, play with it, give us feedback. that's what keeps us driving, keeps us going. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here so much, John. With that, we will conclude the recording. But again, thank you from the Blockchain Society.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate the time, and I hope it's of some value to folks who watch and listen. Thanks again.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah.
Awesome.